You're listening to Releasing Trauma, a survivor's podcast. And now here's your host, Tracy Osborne. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Today, we are talking about the mental well-being of our kids, especially during this ongoing pandemic. It's really played havoc on our kids the past couple of years with all the craziness with school and everything else. So joining me today is Stephanie Bolster McCannon, and she is a positivity professional health and wellness coach. So she is going to talk with us today about how we can kind of protect and help our kids. So Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy. I think this is a really important topic, and I really appreciate you bringing it out to your listeners. Absolutely.
It is a very important topic. The pandemic has really created a lot of trauma worldwide on so many different levels. And, I think one of the things that we tend to forget or not really think about is the effect it has on our kids. Because we're always kids are resilient, kids bounce back, they adapt to change really quickly. And that's not always the case.
Well, it's not always the case. And that's what we're seeing, especially as we've gotten back into school. It's been reported that children, one teacher put it as they're like feral cats. They don't know how to behave anymore. And we are seeing that across all grade levels. There's a regression in our socialization with our children and the children's socialization in school. And my concern is that the teachers are already stressed out, and it's difficult for all of us can appreciate this. It's difficult to be your best when you're not feeling your best. So stress has a lot to do with it for our children and our teachers. And I'm a huge advocate on connection before correction. And as long as we become aware that our children may come home with notes or they may be misbehaving, it's really due to their own stress and anxiety and worry and all the things that they've been under. So my appeal is, don't worry. Your child isn't lost or misbehaving, because they want to. They're just really trying to figure it out for themselves. And as the parents and caregivers and teachers, we really need to keep an eye on that anxiety. The statistics have not been pretty, let's put it that way. So connection before correction.
I like that. I like that statement. I'm going to have to write that one down. So, I know for me personally, for my kids anyway, the pandemic was actually one of the best things that happened to them, my two youngest kids, because both of them struggle with school, and they both have social anxiety. So they hated going to school. And the virtual learning has been a godsend. And honestly, I think if the pandemic hasn't happened, I don't know if they would be graduating this year or not.
Wow.
That it was that bad. But because we were able to switch to virtual schooling, and where we're at, you have the choice each year of whether or not you want your kid to do virtual school or in-person school. And that choice was crucial. It not only did their grades just like skyrocket from C's, D's, and F's to A's and B's, but their confidence levels, their anxiety levels, everything has improved.
That is really wonderful to hear. And I think to that point, Tracy, it's really important for parents and like you to assess what your child needs. I did a hybrid. I homeschooled my children for many, many years, mainly because we were military and always moving, and education was hugely important to me. And I wanted consistency for my children. Right. So, we homeschooled, and that worked really well. It's not for everybody, just like
Mm-mm.
the way that we choose to parent or feed our children or where they sleep. I've been
Right.
the gamut with, there's no one right way. So I really appreciate that you've looked at your children and their needs and what's going to serve them best. Now that's not, it's not for everybody. And a lot of parents were suffering because they didn't want to teach them. They didn't feel like they had the skills or the time. They had full-time jobs and it was an immensely stressful event for them and the children, for these children who thrive in those social settings, which many do. It was a huge hit for them.
Yep.
They missed seeing their friends. They missed interacting with teachers and play and all of those things. So I think just like going back to work for many of us adults, it's a really great opportunity for us to assess, what does work best for my children? Maybe this, virtual learning is better for them. Maybe going back to the classroom is better for them. So I think it's really wonderful that your children have found something that works for them and it's available for you.
Yeah. Well, I've got to be totally honest. If it wasn't for the fact that they were seniors right now, and they just kind of do their own thing, it wouldn't work, because if it relied on me having to sit there and coach them through what they're doing, making sure that they're doing that, if I had to do this for my grandkids who are in first and third grade, that would not work, because I'm not a teacher. I don't have the patience or the desire. So it worked for our dynamic, but it just, like you said, is not for everybody.
It's not. And I think that we have to be really careful as a society and as parents. One of the things that I was, speaking about just last week, actually, is, and this is also what we're seeing in schools, is the tremendous amount of what we call policing or tattletelling. They're not wearing their masks. Yes. All this stuff. And it's so prevalent, and it's so difficult for the children are being told they have to do this, they have to do that, rules, more rules than we ever had. Not that rules are wrong, but it's this policing part. And I've noticed that in society in general, we've become policing of each other. Like I was about to say, was having this conversation last week that many of us are at that level where we can't even give ourselves permission to have fun. It's like if we see somebody doing something fun, then they're not being serious enough, or they didn't take the pandemic seriously, or something like that. So I just caution, because I was a homeschooling mom. I've been on both sides of the fence. I just, caution people to appreciate what's working for them and just mind our thoughts about maybe what we could be thinking about other people that have chosen to homeschool or not to homeschool, or they're doing this hybrid thing. As the society, we just need to be aware of our criticisms of ourselves and others. But getting back to the mental health, and I'm glad that you said that your kids were seniors. It doesn't mean that they're completely not affected.
No, not at all.
Yeah. And my son graduated from college just last year, and you think, oh, he made it. Woohoo. But he's still mentally suffering because he feels, as many do, even in high school, like you mentioned, the high school seniors, that they missed out. They missed out on these really important moments, significant moments in their life that they'll never be able to get back. We can't just, give that back to them. So opening up the dialogue, checking in with them, asking them, how are they feeling, giving them permission to express whatever that is. And I use this very positive line of questioning. It's called the 3 nicest things. And it's a great way to connect with our families, our partners, people at work. I do it at my dinner table. Everybody who comes to my house for dinner better be prepared because we're going to do this. And it's gotten to be quite fun, but it's called the 3 nicest things. And the first is, what's the nicest thing that you did for somebody today? And as we're talking about mental health, a lot of times when we get into high levels of anxiety and then depression, it's really difficult for us to see outside of that muddy glass. We lose hope, and this happens for our children too. Nothing seems to be going well. Nothing works. It's just the, Eeyore syndrome, if you will. But that's what happens to us and get into the science behind it. So by asking this question and starting with the value that they bring to other people, what was the nicest thing you did for somebody? A lot of times you're going to get the pushback. I don't, nothing, but if you press a little and just remind them, it doesn't have to be big. They didn't have to go build a house for a neighbor. Maybe they put the dishes in the dishwasher instead of leaving them on the table. Maybe they picked up a pencil for somebody or whatever, just tiny little regular things, just whatever they can come up with. And you'll be surprised what they do come up with. And then the second question is letting them see that others value them. What's the nicest thing someone did for you? So I serve somebody and people are serving me too. And again, you may have to press a little. There's a thing in coaching that we let the silence do the talking. Sometimes we just have to be quiet until they answer. And the third question, Tracy, which is often the hardest for mothers, I have found, is what's the nicest thing you did for yourself? How are you honoring you? What are you doing for you? And by asking those questions, at a family gathering or just throughout the day, if you make it consistent, it's amazing what we find out about the people in our life. It's amazing what they find that they did was valuable. It's heartwarming to hear them justifying that other people are doing nice things for them and what they're doing for themselves. So I really, really love for people to participate in that, and classrooms can do it too. My daughter did this at orchestra camp years and years ago. And as far as I know, they still continue to do it today because it was so much better than saying, how was your day?
Fine.
You get fine, fine, whatever.
Right. What'd you learn at school? Nothing.
Yes. Yeah. So when you ask those detailed questions, you really get a huge amount of data and information about what they're doing in their day. You find out who they're interacting with. They'll do something for a friend or a teacher. And, let's face it, as parents, sometimes we get into our own trap of a relationship with our children, especially if it's not always positive, and we can get fixated on the things that aren't going well. That's just human nature. Like, their room's never clean, their homework's never done, and it just is a negative cycle. But when we can break that, and it opens our eyes both ways to all the wonderful things that our children are participating in and how other people are participating with them, it's really, really a wonderful way to connect. And that's what we're needing through this time. And it's great to do after they go to college too. So hang in there, Tracy, if that's what they're choosing to do.
Oh yeah. I've got 2 that are 30 and 26. So yep. I'm just thinking of asking these questions to my 26-year-old and what her sarcastic answers would be.
Oh yeah. Oh well, let me just say that I've been it. I've done it. I've seen it all. I've gotten the pushbacks, but I'm like, you know what? Just like I used to do this thing, I still do it sometimes when all my kids come home. It's called 15 minutes of force. And yep, everybody has to show up, and we set the timer for 15 minutes, and grumpily they usually start. And then usually often what happens is when that timer goes off, they want to keep playing. So sometimes we have to, that's why I call it forced fun. Sometimes we have to really set the gauntlet down. Like, yes, everybody's participating. No, you don't have to like it. Yes, you can be mad about it. I'm going to give you permission to have whatever experience that you want to have, but it's so much fun at the end. The timer goes off and they're like, okay, one more round. Let's keep playing. Let's finish.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I like that idea.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to hear what your 26-year-old says about her thing, but consistency is key with that. Keep asking.
Yeah. I'll have to, that'll be interesting. So, with our kids in this mental strain, especially, well, I mean, I don't want to, I say especially like our younger kids, but the younger kids don't have necessarily the mental capacity to understand what's going on in their minds or in their bodies as far as their emotions. So, Stephanie, what can we do to, kind of help them process through? And, first we had the COVID, now we've got this war going on. And, and that's scary. My girls are coming to me going, are we going to get blown up? Is my boyfriend going to get drafted into the service? So there's fear going on. So how do we help our kids?
The way that we always have. And I think this is important to keep in perspective. Number one, we're not the only time period or society that has gone through traumatic events.
Right.
We are resilient as human beings. The key, though, is keeping conversation and communication open, even with our young children, is asking those questions, being as honest as we can. Just like you said, it's scary, not pretending that it's not, being able to say, I'm scared too, and I don't know what's going to happen. We know uncertainty breeds anxiety. So giving ourselves and other people permission to not know, because we don't. Nobody has a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen. But being able to say, I'm feeling anxious or I'm scared. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what's going on. And then on the other side of that, look at what you can control. What can we control? Well, if it is significant for your family and loved ones to get together often, or to share a meal together, or to have phone conversations, or to get on Skype, what can you control? We know that social aspect is hugely important, and keeping the dialogue open, keeping those check-ins, and just say, hey, I woke up and saw the news this morning and I am just beside myself. I'm wondering how you're doing about that. How are you feeling about it? Those check-ins are hugely important. It's not pretending as parents or caregivers or professionals that we know it all, that we have all the answers. That's not helpful. Giving ourselves and our children and other people permission to be afraid, permission to be angry, permission to not know. And going back to your question about our younger children that don't know how to process, they don't have the ability or the skill set yet. That's where our modeling comes in as caregivers and parents and teachers. And one of the ways that's very helpful, especially for younger children, is through play. And again, even our 3-year-olds, can express anger. We've all seen temper tantrums.
Oh, yeah.
And so again, my appeal is to go back to that connection before correction. Give them more hugs, give them more opportunities to play and ask those questions. And one of the other things I was really on the bandwagon when all this started, and I still am, is the news. We have got to protect our children. They do not need to be hearing the news 24/7. Or I really caution parents because it's energy. And a lot of the news that we're picking up is very excitatory. I asked my parents to go to a different room and just hear the news, just hear what's going on and test your body's reaction. Your children can pick up on that same energy, and it's usually not positive, and it's usually not even just informational. It's usually very excitatory. So I really, for your mental health too, we should be limiting news, but that's a different topic in and of itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for our children, we really need to be cautious about that, but allowing them an opportunity to express their feelings and just asking them, and noticing, like if I had a young 3-year-old in my life and I saw that they were getting angry or throwing a toy or smashing something, whatever acting out behavior, or maybe just crying or just not themselves. This is what we're talking about. We're seeing regression at all age levels.
Right.
Is, sitting with them and noticing that. I teach a 4-part communication, and we can do this with our children. You notice the behavior. It's never you. You say things like, I noticed you threw your toy in the garbage, or I noticed you hit your brother. That makes me feel, sad as your mom, and it makes maybe your brother feel unsafe. I'm wondering if you're feeling scared or hurt, or whatever the word that your child can understand would be. And then asking them, the very last part of that is, I'm wondering if you could just come to me and ask for a hug if you're feeling, this way again, or if you're wanting to hit somebody, come tell mommy, or we'll do something. There are many ways that you can handle that last piece, depending on the age level, but it's addressing the action and the behavior. It's not, you're a bad person, you're a bad kid, you're bad. It's getting very detailed about what you're noticing, because they're reacting just like we react, and it's helping them navigate through these emotions with all these different tools that we have available to us. Some of us as adults don't use them, and so can't model them. So, it's just like putting on that oxygen mask. We've got to help ourselves first before we can help our children. So if you're not addressing these issues for yourself, and you're modeling anger, or other behaviors that you're noticing in your children, then I encourage you to reach out to somebody, because you're suffering too. We cannot pretend, that we've got it all together when we're feeling uncertain too. And if we don't have outlets, to help us deal with our anxiety and our stress and the pressures of life, then we're not going to be able to positively help our children. So that's number one. Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. And so much of it isn't, like you said, it's all in the way we handle it and the way we communicate with them. Far too often it's instead of stopping and trying to figure out what's wrong with them and why they're behaving the way they are, we're just, you can't do that, don't do that, that's bad, that's naughty, we don't hit people. Instead of trying to get down to the root of what's going on. And it's a lot of it is a matter of the fact that they don't have the communication skills to explain what's going on with them. And so they act out, or they're not getting the attention that they need. And so they misbehave. Because bad attention is better than no attention, So communication with our kids and honesty at whatever level they are is crucial.
Yeah, it is. This is why I don't want parents or caregivers of any kind, to sugarcoat. I mean, we don't have to get down to the nitty gritty. You mentioned, your daughters, and they're older and they can handle those deeper conversations about, is my boyfriend going to, go get drafted? We can talk about that and talk about the fear and that scary and options and all of those things. I mean, my grandparents went through the same things. Our parents have dealt with that too. So these are life events that we don't have a magic wand to make those things go away. But what we do have is the ability to connect, to hear, to sit with one another in our pain and happiness too. There is an opportunity for us always to find out what's going well, even in the trauma parts, but not sugarcoating, not ignoring, not dismissing when our children or ourselves are feeling some of these. I don't think any feeling is negative, but just to roll with it,
Right.
Some people feel that the negative behaviors and feelings aren't the good ones. So they put it on a good, bad list. So I'll speak in that language, but I don't believe it. I think all of our feelings and emotions are trying to signal and tell us something. So none of them are
they're
wrong.
all valid.
They're all valid. And I think that's to your point, is being honest, and validating at any level, even our 3-year-olds, that are just validating that I see that you're suffering. I see that you're having this temper tantrum, or you're starting to wet your pants again, or the bed again, and just that connection. That's why that connection before correction is so important. Digging out why. I used to teach what's called home and hospital here in the state of Maryland. And it was for traditional students that would be going to a public school that couldn't for various reasons. And my philosophy, especially for the children that we would call non-traditional students, they usually got kicked out because of some behavior. And sometimes it was really, really bad, punching teachers, kicking out school bus windows, destructive behavior to property. But my philosophy was to go in and ask why. Why would this child behave this way? And when we start asking that question and getting curious, why, there's always a suffering behind it. I remember one particular boy, he was a 4th grader, and he punched his pregnant teacher and kicked out the school bus window. Oof. And so I had to go to his home and finish teaching him for the rest of the year. And the environment that he lived in was not a great environment. I was, his parents fought, physically beat each other up. And he didn't even raise his head, didn't even raise an eyebrow. And I had to do so. And then the second piece was he was dyslexic and nobody tested him ever. So it's finding out, and which was so crucial. It was easy for me to see because I was curious. I wanted to know where this behavior was coming from. So that was already my perspective. And when I started looking back at his doing some investigative work, I found out that he always shut down at a particular time of day. And it come to find out that time was his reading time. And, teachers would report like, oh my gosh, during these times or this, he's such a nice young man. And I'm like, okay, then who was being curious to say, why is he falling apart at this particular time of day? So I just ask again for us as caregivers, especially during this time, because we're going to see more aggressive behavior because of these emotions that they don't know what to do with, that you keep, pointing out, Tracy. It's so important for us to be curious and to connect and try to get to the heart of the matter. So we can serve each other. We can help them.
Absolutely. Well, Stephanie, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on and talking with us today.
Oh, you're so welcome. And peace to all of your parents out there and children. There is hope. There is the dawn of a new day, and we're getting there, even with all the unrest.
Yep, absolutely. Change is here and change is coming, but it's, I think we're starting to see the light again. So
perfect.
Keep breathing, mamas.
Yes.
And daddies.
Keep hugging, keep breathing, keep loving.
Yep, absolutely. Listeners, I will have all of Stephanie's information in the show notes. As always, the link to her website and all of that. Just go to releasingtraumapodcast.com, pull up Stephanie's episode, and it will all be there. And again, if you're listening from your favorite podcast app, please be sure to give us a like, a subscribe, a follow, leave a review. All of that stuff matters. So thank you so much for listening. As always, we'll talk to you in the next show. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure you hit subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss a show. Be sure to check us out on our new socials on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.